Hello, dear friends. The disadvantage of intelligence is that one is continually obliged to learn. Josh Bednat Show. I believe that many beings have planned their life on Earth as they are living or have lived it, believing in the system, not questioning anything, believing in the means, in the media. Basically, they sacrifice themselves so that we can learn from their absurd behavior, so that we can become stronger, and so that we can win. Sign it, Stefan. Opinion piece. Were the 49 Starlink satellites shot down? Directed energy weapons suspected could have exacerbated a weak solar storm. Destructive beam would have been fired from Europe. Satellites survived stronger than solar storms. Starlink would break global communication monopoly. Satellites are equipped with krypton hole thrusters. Legal defeats don't stop haunting Donald Trump. Ottawa police chief declares occupation over. Canadian judges release arrestees for unlawful detention. Australian freedom convoy marches to parliament. Ukraine begins attacking Russia with firing artillery shells. Russia's Rostov region plans to take in up to 900,000 refugees from Donbas. Let's start. Someone deliberately shot down Elon Musk's 49 Starlink satellites that fell to Earth, according to Dr. Michael Salla and Benjamin Fulford. They would have been knocked out, allegedly, by a directed energy beam located on the ground and coming from Europe, north of Italy, probably around the Vatican or Lake Geneva. They do not want Musk to take away their control over global communication. Musk is currently under coalition protection. He's been carefully watched. It cost SpaceX $250,000 to build and launch each satellite, so Elon Musk has lost a lot of money. A directed energy weapon is characterized by emitting highly condensed energy, transferring it to the target to damage it. The procedure for transferring energy can take on many different forms: microwave fronts, laser beams, particle beams, or even sound waves. Michael Salla, Ben Davidson of Space Weather News, did an analysis of the geomagnetic storm that hit the SpaceX satellites and pointed out how weak that storm was compared to severe space weather that could be up to 1,000 times more powerful. SpaceX satellites have survived geomagnetic conditions 10 times more disruptive than the one that allegedly destroyed the satellites. To explain the satellites' puzzling failure, Davidson concludes that the real culprit in their demise would be the weakening of the geomagnetic field, removing Earth's protective shield against adverse space weather. It is hard to imagine that a subtly weakening geomagnetic field makes SpaceX satellites vulnerable to space weather 10 times weaker than previously endured. The most likely scenario is the weak space weather in the path of the satellites temporarily increased in a covert attack. The world's communications system is controlled by dark-side assets, who own the major media and large social networking companies. Musk's Starlink would break the dark side's monopoly control over global communications, which would explain the Starlink satellite attack. Given the dark side's access to weather modification and other hybrid technologies that could exacerbate atmospheric and solar storms with great precision, it is very plausible that the Galactic Federation is helping Musk launch more advanced technologies to help humankind, many of which have been suppressed for decades. Satellite swarm. Starlink is a satellite internet constellation operated by SpaceX that provides satellite internet access coverage to most of the Earth. It consists of many thousands of small mass-produced satellites in low Earth orbit, which communicate with designated ground-based transceivers. As of January 2022, the beta internet service offering is available in 25 countries. Starlink is a company that was born as a SpaceX project for the creation of a constellation of internet satellites to provide broadband, low-latency, global coverage internet service at low cost. SpaceX Satellite Development Facility in Redmond, Washington, houses Starlink's research, development, manufacturing, and orbit control teams. Astronomers have expressed concern about the effect of constellations on ground-based astronomy and how satellites will add to an already congested orbital environment. SpaceX has attempted to mitigate the astronomical concern by applying several upgrades to the Starlink satellites in order to reduce their brightness during operation. The satellites are equipped with krypton-fueled Hall thrusters that allow them to leave orbit at the end of their life. In addition, the satellites are designed for autonomous collision avoidance. Reset news. First, extreme weather conditions prevailed across Europe, including France, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, as well as Brazil and the US Midwest and the East Coast, cancelling planes, trains, and other transportation. Second, on February 18th, there were extreme weather conditions throughout Europe, Brazil, and the Midwest and East Coast of the US, probably caused by geoengineering, all of which caused grounding of planes, trains, and scheduled transportation. Third, we expect no more energy bills, no more taxes, no more tariffs, no more illegal mortgages, no more poverty, no more homelessness, no more third world people returning home to build first world destinations. Governments at 10% of their current size, plenty of wealth for all, housing for all, etc. Canada. First, on Friday morning, Canadian police were making mass arrests of peaceful protesters in direct violation of a written agreement signed with the Canadian government. Second, on Friday night, and despite freezing temperatures and an army of police, protesters in Ottawa refused to back down. Third, Ottawa police served notices to truckers warning them of imminent arrests if they didn't leave the area. No one at the freedom protests in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand will leave the area. Fourth, Ottawa Police Chief declares occupation over. Ottawa's interim police chief, Steve Bell, declared Saturday that the Freedom Convoy protests in Canada's capital were over after nearly 200 protesters were arrested and many others left the area. 5. Canada has just arrested Tamara Lich, co-organizer of the convoy under Trudeau's Emergency Act. When police took her away, she shouted, "Keep in line." Peaceful Canadian protesters arrested and then released by judges because the arrests are illegal. 7. Thousands of protesters have traveled to Ottawa, Canada, while thousands more American truckers will travel from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. Plus, there will be ongoing patriotic demonstrations for freedom in Australia, New Zealand, and throughout Europe. 8. Freedom Week will begin in Canada next Monday, February 21st, and will be celebrated around the world by millions of people participating in truckers and farmers' freedom convoys and demonstrations calling for an end to the mandates. Excuse me. Repressions. First, Biden declares national emergency before truck convoy heads to Washington, D.C. He just issued the declaration in an executive letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Second, Australian Freedom Convoy marches to Parliament Building. The Convoy to Canberra movement organised several anti-mandate marches in the Australian capital on Saturday. Groups of protesters moved in various directions in the city centre, blocked traffic and converged near the Parliament buildings. Third, in Australia, police reportedly using microwave-directed energy weapons, causing burns and injuries to peaceful protesters in Canberra. One woman describes a burning sensation on her skin, blistered lips, bone pain, yellowing eyes, severe headaches and exhaustion. U.S. News. First, Donald Trump must testify in a New York investigation, a judge rules. Second, legal defeats continue to haunt Donald Trump. Former President Trump faced one legal setback after another this week. One judge ordered him to appear in New York to answer questions about his business practices, while his accounting firm declared his financial statement unreliable. Another judge rejected his efforts to have racketeering claims dismissed. On top of all this, the National Archives confirmed that he took classified information to Florida when he left the White House. Third, nearly 500 arrested for human trafficking in California. Fourth, Seattle. When you form a group to voluntarily clean up trash in homeless camps, Antifa attacks you. 5. Students destroy hundreds of books by colonizers, it is to say, white people. High school students at North Allegheny Senior High School in Wexford, Pennsylvania, have released a video in which they decolonize, in quotes, the school library by destroying hundreds of books written by white writers. This is reminiscent of Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution. Opinions. First, we are in the midst of a tremendous shift in public opinion. Winter is not over, but the truth is now sprouting in 1,000 places. Second, the tide is turning by Sierra. With each passing day, the awakened around the world are forcing politicians to expend more and more ammunition. The Great Awakening is happening every day before our eyes. Third, has the West fallen by Clavan? Western leaders work to crush peaceful protests, enforce failed mandates, and silence the central line. Are we still free? 4. Desperate governments do desperate things. They have done it in the past and they are doing it again. So this is rapidly coming to a head. 5. White hats were expected to intervene to protect citizens. 6. We fight real demons disguised to look somewhat human. 7th, Alex Collier declares that everything is going to change, literally everything. Rumors of war. First, Biden calls national security meeting on Ukraine. President Biden will convene a meeting with the National Security Council to discuss the situation in Ukraine on Sunday, after he claimed that significant intelligence indicates that Russia would invade Ukraine in the coming days. In quotes. Second, Russian statement. In quotes. What is happening in Donbas, I repeat once again, is very disturbing news that really causes a sense of alarm and is potentially very dangerous, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters. Third, Ukrainian artillery shell hits Russian territory. General mobilization in Donbas. Russia closes the border. An artillery shell of the armed forces of Ukraine hit the Russian territory at a depth of 1 kilometer in the Rostov region, 300 meters from the houses of Russian citizens. At the same time, a general mobilization was declared in Lugansk and Donetsk, while a Ukrainian soldier was killed. A water station was shelled. Russian-speaking people have posted a video in the armed forces of the Ukraine shelling a water station in Vasilivka. Fourth, Ukraine attacks Russia firing artillery shells at Russian settlement. Ukrainian armed forces attacked Russian territory with long-range artillery. On Saturday morning, during another massive shelling of the territory of the Donbas republics, Ukrainian units also attacked Russian territory, firing shells at the territory of the village of Mityakinskaya. 5. Major Russian gas pipeline to Europe blown up. A major Russian gas pipeline to Europe was sabotaged in the northern Donbas area. A gas pipeline in the Lugansk region of eastern Ukraine exploded. Russian media claim that the Ukrainian armed forces blew up the Druzhba gas pipeline. 6. Threat. The head of the Donetsk Republic was clear that, in quotes, "Unfortunately, we are going to war with Ukraine. Kiev will attack. Its forces have taken attack positions." In quotes again, they will invade and try to occupy the area. Donetsk accuses Kiev of attacking 3 localities with heavy weapons. 7. Russian-backed separatist forces claim that the Ukrainian army is currently intensively shelling towns and villages in the southern Donetsk region, such as Elenovka, using 122 mm artillery pieces that separatist forces are beginning to return fire. 8th, counterattack. Donbas defense forces counterattacked the positions of advancing Ukrainian armed forces with artillery and dozens of tanks. They used not only artillery but also tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and other weapons for retaliatory attacks. 9. Authorities in the Donetsk region claim that they killed 2 members of a group of Ukrainian army saboteurs who were trying to blow up cylinders with chlorine in Horlivka. The saboteurs spoke Polish. 10th. The US and the other NATO countries are still not ready to adequately perceive Russia's security demands. 11th. Germany believes that NATO has broken its promises to Moscow. NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe generates a justified sense of threat in Russia because it contravenes the promises made by the alliance itself, says Willy Wimmer, former Secretary of State in the German Defense Ministry. 12. Russians have hacked the military-industrial complex. Russian hackers have been stealing sensitive information from US arms companies for several years. A recent announcement by security agencies claims. Mass evacuations. Sirens sounding in Donbas, and hundreds of thousands flee in buses to Russia. The Lugansk People's Republic in eastern Ukraine also announces an evacuation and urges civilians to go to Russia as soon as possible. It claims Ukrainian forces are about to invade and says Russia will provide accommodation for those evacuating. Russian prosecutors blame Ukrainian forces for shelling residential areas in Donetsk and Lugansk and open a criminal investigation. Second, mass evacuation of people fleeing the Ukrainian attack in Donbas. A mass evacuation is currently taking place in the separatist city of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine, and Russia is receiving all refugees from Luhansk and Donetsk. Third, Russian Rostov region plans to receive up to 900,000 refugees from Donbas. Russia's Rostov region, bordering Ukraine, plans to receive up to almost 1 million refugees from Donbas on its territory. Fourth, la desbandada de Málaga a Almería. The rush from Málaga to Almería. This Russian evacuation reminds me of the greatest massacre in Spain that continues to be silenced 85 years later. 85 years ago, Almería experienced a genocide of unknown dimensions, Almería and Málaga. But the desbandada is still a silent massacre in Spain. The murder of thousands of defenseless civilians was the global prelude to the great crimes of the 20th century. A few survivors protest the tribute to the Balearic cruiser, which played an infamous role in killing defenseless citizens. This is not an ideological issue, but a humanitarian one. I do not take sides in the Spanish Civil War, because, in my opinion, there were no sides, but a massacre between brothers. That's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.